We have a very special program here. Josh Furman is going to give us a wonderful presentation about the Beth Yeshurun archives, but I'm going to let our past president, Arlene Staller, introduce him since she worked many hours with him collecting from the archives that we have here to contribute to the Houston Jewish Archives. So thank you for coming, and here's Arlene.
Okay, I think most people know Josh, but just a quick introduction. He is a native Texan. He was born in San Antonio, grew up in San Antonio, and received his PhD in modern Jewish history from the University of Maryland in 2015. He specializes in American Jewish social and cultural history with research interests in suburbanization, education, and family life since World War II. He currently teaches at Rice University, and he teaches Texas Jewish history, the American Jewish immigrant experience, African American Jewish relations, and my favorite, Jewish food traditions. He is working on a book about the history of Houston Jewish community and migration to the Meyerland neighborhood. Many of us met him originally when he spoke about Meyerland, which is near and dear to most of our hearts. He is the founding director of the Houston Jewish History Archive at Rice, dedicated to the preservation and study of Jewish life in Houston and South Texas. Many of you remember after Harvey hit, we had millions of volunteers helping us try to preserve documents. Josh and his team were here right with us, kneeling on wet, nasty floors, picking up documents, putting newspapers, doing anything they could to save what we had. So those records from Beth Yeshurun, from UOS, from the JCC, from the Federation, those all form the basis of the permanent collection of archived materials at the Woodson Research Center at Rice. And over the last couple of years, more and more people have been donating to him. He's been working with individual family groups, institutions. So it is, if you haven't gone to see it, I encourage you to go. It's amazing what they have. And I will tell you, David Bell and I both worked on this with Josh, just the Beth Yeshurun piece. It's so heartwarming to go back and see people, grandparents, great-grandparents, our friends when they were in pre-K or preschool. It's amazing the documents that we have found that relate to the Jewish history of Houston. So this is going to be very interesting, and I'd like to introduce Josh Furman.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Shavua Tov, Shana Tova. Thank you for being here. This is really special for me. I've been told that at 9:30, someone is coming to take my projector and my microphone. So I have less than an hour. That's what we have. Take an extra 10 minutes. Well, right, we'll see. We're on Jewish time. Tonight, what I'd like to do, and I want to thank Rihanna Sherman, and I want to thank the clergy for the invitation to be with you tonight. Obviously, later tonight, we'll be observing Selichot and beginning the season of repentance and introspection, and it's a perfect time for looking back as we prepare to move forward. And I'm a historian, so I'm always looking back. So it feels very appropriate to be with you tonight. What I want to do is talk for just a few minutes in general terms about what the Houston Jewish History Archive is. Some of you may be learning about this tonight for the first time. Others of you heard a version of this presentation 4 days ago and are going to be very generous and polite and pretend like it's new. And then with the balance of my time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show the history of Beth Yeshurun through its archives. I'm not going to narrate the history of every rabbi, or I'm going to show you some of the amazing things that remarkably, miraculously, we were able to recover after Hurricane Harvey. So let me get started. So the archive was founded in the wake of Hurricane Harvey, and our mission is to collect, preserve, and make accessible the documents, photographs, artifacts, and memories that tell the story of Jewish life primarily in Houston, but also across the South Texas region. And I'm talking tonight about Beth Yeshurun, but we have over 120 collections in this archive in just 2+ years of operation that covers, as I said, not only Houston, but Galveston, Wharton, Beaumont, Baytown, Victoria, Schulenburg, Corpus Christi, and San Antonio. So we've really taken it upon ourselves to do this work, not only here in Houston, but for the South Texas region. And there's a good reason for doing that. There are several good reasons. One is that many of us who make our homes now in Houston grew up in those other towns, grew up in Galveston, or grew up in Wharton, or maybe we had parents or grandparents who did. So you can't really understand the Houston Jewish experience without broadening out and looking at the bigger picture. The HJHA, that's our acronym, is a collaboration between the Program in Jewish Studies at Rice, of which I'm a faculty member, and the Woodson Research Center in Fondren Library, which I'll be introducing you to in just a minute. So what do? What is this archive about? First and foremost, we collect and acquire rare documents, photographs, diaries, scrapbooks, audio recordings, video recordings, bowling trophies, matchbooks, postcards, anything that helps us tell the story of what it's like to be Texan and Jewish. When we can, we digitize them and we make them available online. We are just now beginning to work in oral history and to interview people about their experiences. We sponsor exhibits, lectures like the one you're listening to, and public programs. We have a website and a Facebook page, which I'll introduce you to as time permits, if they don't yank the microphone away. This began, as I noted, in the wake of Hurricane Harvey. My wife is here tonight. She's somewhere in the back. My wife, Alicia, and I, about a week after Hurricane Harvey, I started wondering, what is it that I can do to help? You know, I'm a historian. I don't know construction. I can't rip up walls or tear out sheetrock. Well, what can I do? And I started to get worried about some of the historical records in synagogues, such as United Orthodox and Beth Yeshurun, that had flooded, and wanted to do something about it. So the very first day of this archive, the moment this whole project was born, was September 4th, 2017. My wife and I met a Rice colleague of mine, Melissa Kane, at UOS, and we went into a flooded storage closet and pulled out really old UOS records, cemetery maps, membership directories, commemorative bulletins. And the thing about most of this work is that there's one copy of something, and if we lose that one copy, it's gone forever, and it's not coming back. So very quickly, we discovered that there was urgent work to do in terms of archival recovery, and we managed to save, not everything, but we managed to save a lot of stuff. And then I said, okay, let's go to Beth Yeshurun. And before I show you Beth Yeshurun, just to back up a second, this is one of the things we rescued out of that flooded storage closet in UOS. This is a cemetery map and membership directory from Adeth Emeth. That's one of the congregations that became UOS in the 1960s, and this is their 1935 membership directory. When we found it, it was wet, it was covered in mold, it was disgusting, and my colleague, Dr. Kane, took it home and stood in her bathroom with a blow dryer, sucking up moisture page by page for hours to save that book. So we all owe her a huge debt of gratitude. Then we came to Beth Yeshurun, and here, as Arlene mentioned, and as Rabbi Morgan, I think, mentioned, joined really an incredible team effort of Beth Yeshurun members. I know that Bernice Potvin was very involved, and Rabbi Fort, who I think is here, you'll see here in a minute. This is what Stein Hall looked like a week after Hurricane Harvey. It was not fun. Never thought I would get a historian action shot. Never really wanted one, but there you go. And here are some more images from that day. Here's Rabbi Fort, who hadn't been here all that long, and really jumped into this work with great energy and really helped us out in a huge way. And We couldn't save everything. There was a lot of stuff that was just too far gone, ruined, destroyed, and this is an example here of what water unfortunately does to photographs. These photographs are part of the Beth Yeshurun collection. We've actually preserved a significant amount of water-damaged photographs so that we'll never forget what happened and what the risk is with flooding in historical records. Actually, I posted one of these to Facebook, and somebody wrote and said, "I have one of those, and it's not ruined. You can have it." That was great. That was a great moment. What are we looking for? The bottom line, because I get phone calls and emails, and people are really excited about this project, and that's very gratifying. So what do we collect? The bottom line is, in order for us to take it into the archive, it has to be Jewish and Texan. If it doesn't check one of those boxes, it's not really part of our purview. That includes a lot of things: scrapbooks, family photographs, diaries, confirmation, bar bat mitzvah, wedding photos, programs, institutional records from synagogues like Beth Yeshurun, Jewish organizations, Jewish-owned businesses. A few weeks ago, we got a collection of Star Furniture records from the Wolf-Tuman family. Really exciting. Board minutes, bulletins, correspondence. We have a large collection from Texas Jewish veterans, primarily from World War II, but not exclusively, and we're always looking for more. Dog tags, medals, discharge papers, photographs, memoirs, letters, etc., etc. Artifacts on a case-by-case basis. We have some large artifacts, but we don't have unlimited space. I'm not going to be talking about it tonight, but the most incredible artifact that we have in the library at Rice is a World War II banner from a synagogue called Beth Jacob. Beth Jacob, like Adathemeth, I know. Beth Jacob is one of the constituent synagogues of United Orthodox. It no longer exists. Somebody had in her garage a Beth Jacob World War II flag that was 80 years old, and we rescued it. But I'm not here to talk about that tonight. And we have audio and video recordings. You heard some audio of Cantor Wagner as you walked in, maybe. Maybe you recognize that voice, some of you. Maybe you had that recording as you were studying for your bar mitzvah in the 1960s. That's what that was. That was a bar mitzvah, here's how to lead the services tape. So we're looking for that. Sermons, radio programs, cantorial music, and so on and so forth. What are we not collecting? Some days it feels like nothing. But really what we're not collecting is general Judaica. So if you have a lot of just old Jewish books, if there's no Texas connection, it's not of interest to us. And we generally don't accept photocopies or reproductions. We want to have the real thing. And if you'll donate the real thing to us, we'll make a copy for you. Okay? And if there's time at the end, I'll take questions. All of this stuff is stored at the Woodson Research Center on the Rice campus in Fondren Library. This is a public space. Any of you can walk into the library Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. and say, "Hello, my name is Rabbi Steve Morgan." Actually, any of you should walk in and say, "Hello, my name is Rabbi Steve Morgan." You're right. You have to have your driver's license, so if you're not actually Rabbi Morgan, there's an additional step involved. And say, "I'm here to see the Beth Yeshurun collection." And myself or one of the nice archivists I work with will go and we'll pull some things for you. It's better if you email me to tell me that you're coming so that I can prep some stuff in advance. If you can't do that, then we'll do our best. But this is a public space, and the point of this work is not to hoard stuff in a library where nobody can see it, but really and truly to make it accessible in a way that it's never been before, to elevate and revolutionize the way that we study and research Texas Jewish history. So this is our reading room. So when you come in, you'll sit at one of these tables and we'll pull the box or boxes that you want to see, and you'll sit here. You can take pictures of anything you like. You can make copies of anything you like. The only thing you can't do is, of course, take it home. We're not a lending library. What you won't see when you visit unless you're Rabbi Morgan. Sorry, stop picking on Rabbi Morgan. This is a shot of our back room. This is part of our storage facility. So when a collection comes in, it usually comes in a Trader Joe's shopping bag or a cardboard box or something I bought on eBay. And when we process it, when we organize it, and we put things in folders, and we label folders, and we put things in boxes, then it goes here on the shelf. And it's got a sticker with a name and a collection number and a box number and folder numbers. And this is a temperature-controlled facility. There are security cameras. We do our utmost best to take excellent care of all the materials that we're entrusted with. All right. Now, let's enjoy a virtual tour, as it were, of some of the highlights of the Beth Yeshurun collection. I had hoped, by the way, to do an exhibit tonight, to take director's privilege and yank some stuff out of the library and bring it. And Tropical Storm Imelda had other ideas. And I was not able to get to campus on Friday to gather things for the exhibit. So you'll have to come. You'll just have to come to campus to see this stuff in person. So Beth Yeshurun, as many of you I'm sure know, is not unlike UOS, the product of a merger, the merger of two synagogues, the oldest of which, Beth Yeshurun, dates back to 1891. In the 1880s, there came to the United States the beginnings of a massive wave of Eastern European Jews. I'm willing to wager, not much, but I'm willing to wager that many of us in this room tonight are the descendants of Eastern European Jews who came to this country roughly between the 1880s and the early 1920s. And Houston was one recipient of that wave of immigrants. And those immigrants who came encountered a Houston in which there was only one Jewish house of worship, which was, of course, Beth Israel, which began as an Orthodox synagogue, but very quickly adapted the Reform style of worship that was becoming more and more popular in America at the time. So Eastern European immigrants needed a place to pray according to the way that they had done back home. And originally there were two groups of Eastern European Jews, because there's always two groups, right? We can never agree on how to do things. But they decided, because each group was small, that in order to have a functioning synagogue that could hope to hire a rabbi and a cantor and a shochet, a butcher, they needed to pool their efforts. And so they created a Beth Yeshurun in 1891. And we have in the collection a commemorative book that was produced for Beth Yeshurun's 50th anniversary. Some of you will know this book, I'm sure. It's called The Golden Book of Congregation Beth Yeshurun, and it is the best historical source that we have for not only the early history of this congregation, but really the early history of Jewish Houston as well. And it's full of pictures and descriptions, and here you can just see one page of it that lists some of the founding members of Beth Yeshurun, including Reverend Hurwitz. The Hurwitz name, of course, is well known still in this community. And I could go on, but I don't, unfortunately, have time. This is the oldest photograph in the Beth Yeshurun collection. This is a photograph of the Beth Yeshurun building taken in 1908. And the people who are sitting on the steps of Beth Yeshurun are the members of something called the Jewish Literary Society. Houston had a Jewish Literary Society. Mostly young people in their 20s would get together to discuss politics and literature and news of the day and meet girls and so on and so forth. Everyone's dressed very fancy, and it's a wonderful picture. It is the oldest photograph, not in the archive, but it's the oldest photograph in this particular collection. We're very glad to have it. This is just a note from the Houston Chronicle. This is from October 1902. And it describes Beth Yeshurun holding New Year services At Turner Hall, they did not yet have their own building. We'll get to that in a minute. Conducted by a rabbi named Rabbi El Yazgur. And it's one of the earliest mentions of a Beth Yeshurun in the Houston Chronicle. And that's from 1902. It does note here in the article that the building met for a time at the corner of Hamilton and Preston. What's at Hamilton and Preston today? There you go. This is an invitation to the cornerstone ceremony for a Beth Yeshurun. It's from April 1908. We rescued this as part of the collection after the flood. Currently, this document is in Dallas, where it's getting special treatment from a paper conservator who is working to not only remove some of the mold that this document got, but she's also going to try to remove these ugly brown tape stains. And the money to do that actually came from a grant we received from the National Endowment for the Humanities. So raise your hand if you paid your taxes last year. Thank you very much. You're funding this project. If you didn't pay your taxes last year, don't raise your hand. This is a picture of a Beth Yeshurun's building, the building that was dedicated in 1908. It stood at the corner of Jackson and Walker. What's the corner of Jackson and Walker today? Discovery Green, right? With each passing year, more and more of these buildings from early Houston Jewish history they're no longer there. And the photographs and the archives, that's all we've got. This is a majestic building, at least from the outside. I've heard stories. If some of you in this room have stories, I'd love to hear them as well. This is where Beth Yeshurun got its start, if you will. This is a confirmation photograph from 1917. This is the original photograph. It fell out of a photo album I was looking at in the living room of a woman named Dodie Gaber. Some of you will recognize that name. Leo Gaber was the president of a synagogue I'm going to tell you about in a second called Bethel, which is, of course, the Beth in Beth Yeshurun. She didn't even remember which relative of Leo's had this picture, but there it is. Confirmations look a little bit different today, I think, than they did 102 years ago. It's pretty cool. I think we should bring back that peace friendship logo. I really like it. This is a Beth Yeshurun confirmation photograph from June of 1936. Confirmation photographs are really wonderful, not only for the people who are pictured in them, but also we get a little bit of architecture in the shot, whether it's the inside of the synagogue with the bima or the outside of the synagogue and we get a piece of the wall. Especially when we're talking about a synagogue that no longer exists, all we have to know what it looked like are these photographs. So if you're sitting on a confirmation photograph at home, maybe think about donating it to the archives. It'll end up in my next slideshow. This is a photograph. I have to tell you the story of this photograph. This is the 1940 Sunday school class at a Beth Yeshurun. I went to get this photograph on Thursday. This week. I went to meet a woman in the Galleria who'd been holding on to this photograph for 70-something years. She is a little girl in the front row in this photograph. It was supposed to be an hour-long meeting, and then Imelda showed up, so it was a 6-hour meeting. Hour 4, the gentleman pulled out his collection of old Palestine coins. Hour 5, I asked if there was a vending machine in the building. It was but it was worth it. It was worth it. And this is a labor of love for me that I'm privileged to be able to do, to find these historical treasures that are just, people have held on to them for years, and they have them. And each time I'm able to find one, it's like I've recovered a little piece of something, and we've saved it from being lost. So this, again, is a Beth Yeshurun. You can see the address, 917 there in the shot, and some familiar faces if you know your congregational history going back a few years. We've talked about Beth Yeshurun. Now we need to talk about Beth El. Around 1924, there was a group in the Beth Yeshurun fold. Beth Yeshurun was at that time still an Orthodox congregation, but there was a movement within the community to have a more modern service, to allow men and women to sit together, to introduce an organ into the service, to have a more English readings introduced. And those folks decided they needed their own synagogue. So they broke away from Beth Yeshurun in 1924, and they created Congregation Beth El, Houston's first conservative synagogue. And Beth El, for pretty much its entire existence, occupied this building seen on the postcard behind me. What's cool about this building? It was Beth Israel before it was Beth El. This was Beth Israel's third location. And when Beth Israel built its new building at the corner of Austin and Holman, which is still standing, opposite San Jacinto High School, which some of you may have attended, Beth El took over this building. When the congregations Beth El and Beth Yeshurun merged in the mid-1940s, this building became a church. If you wanted to see this building today, where would you go? Yeah. It's gone. It's gone. Yeah, it was raised in the 1970s. So a lot of these, again, the buildings that form the part of our Beth Yeshurun history, we can't go back and look at them, sadly. But that's what the pictures are for. Here's a better photo of it. As it actually appeared. Still, it says Beth Israel at the top. We have a picture of it, not from the Beth Yeshurun collection, but there's a picture of it once it's a church. And interestingly, the folks put a cross up, but they kept the Hebrew inscription above the door. That was cool. They liked that. So we have a picture of the cross superimposed above the Hebrew inscription, which they left. This is neat. And this is a story, of course, which is a very important chapter in American Jewish history, when synagogues become churches or when churches become synagogues. Both happen with some striking regularity. I'm going to skip this for time. It's a Chronicle article about Beth El. This is a Beth El confirmation picture that we had in the collection. I think this is from 1926 or 27. 1926, that's right, because the woman who appears here is Helen Krakauer. Those of you who know David Wolf, this is David Wolf's mother. And here's, in about 6 pieces, Helen's confirmation certificate, but we saved it. That's right, Rabbi Bleckman. That's right. Is there another David Wolf? The podiatrist. The podiatrist. If you had the podiatrist, you win. It's too fun. This is a slightly later confirmation class photo from Beth El from 1932 with Rabbi Kolish. I love the hats. Check out the hats here. Again, I think we need to bring the hats back. And a confirmation program from 1927. This is a photo that I can never not talk about, and I know Cheryl is here. This is a photograph that Cheryl's mother, Inez, gave to us, and it's her confirmation photograph. And again, this synagogue is gone. So if we want to look at it, we need confirmation pictures. This is a rare shot of Beth El, and it turned out to be a very valuable photograph to another family because the rabbi of Beth El at the time was a rabbi named Bertram Sachs, or sometimes Moses Bertram Sachs. He was here for 1 year. He met the education director. They fell in love. They left Houston. they ended up making Aliyah, and if you ever used the Haggadah a different night, it's his son. Cool story, right? This is the earliest known photograph of the two of them together. It's pretty neat. Yeah, sure did. All right. For me, this is all wonderful, but I mean, having to pick a favorite thing is like having to pick a favorite kid. Some days I do have a favorite kid. But what I want to show you now are some really incredible material that came out of our archives in this building. And I don't know, it's really thanks to Arlene and to David Bell who discovered them. We have, thanks to you, a treasure trove of material about the Houston Jewish experience during World War II. And it's simply breathtaking. Let me just give you a taste of it. During the war, Rabbi Sanders Tofield, who was then the rabbi of Beth Yeshurun, sent out periodically a letter to every member of the Beth Yeshurun family serving in the military. And it was an update, first of all, on what was happening back home in Houston, updates that people had sent him about promotions, deployments, et cetera, and then individual messages to each soldier, right? Mom says, don't forget to brush your teeth. Your brother had a baby, et cetera. If I had time, I would read it. It's an incredible letter. We'll probably digitize it and put it online very soon. If you want me to send it to you, I'll be happy to. It's just wonderful. But it gives a real slice of the home front experience, and also thinking about a rabbi in the middle of World War II doing all he can to try to comfort his community by sending these updates. We also have letters that soldiers in the field sent rabbis describing what they were seeing. And most of them obviously are from men, but at least one of them is from a woman. This is a letter from Women's Army Corps Sergeant Sarah Wagman to Rabbi Aaron Blumenthal. Aaron Blumenthal was the rabbi at Bethel, and it's from December 1942, and she describes her great pride and joy in being able to serve her country, and she can't wait to come back to Houston and pay a visit and tell the rabbi about everything she's seeing. We have probably 100 letters like this. We didn't know we had them. I didn't know you had them. Did you know? This is unbelievable, and I can't underestimate the importance of this, not only for me and not only for you, but for scholars, for students. It's an incredible gift to everybody. It's just wonderful. This is a letter that came not from our collection, but it was addressed to Sergeant Lewis Croft. Some of you will know who Lewis Croft was. Lewis Croft was Rochelle Croft Wunsch's father, and we have a lot of material from them about his experience in the war. But it's a card. It's a card from Congregation Bethel, wishing soldiers a very happy Passover, and says, "May God grant you strength, shield and protect you in your fight to bring freedom for the masses of earth as well as ourselves." March 30th, 1944. Wow. Sometimes we're not able to save everything that we want to save. And by the time we got to this, it was pretty much too late. This was an honor roll poster made in 1943 to honor men and women from the Beth Yeshurun community serving in World War II. And at one time, it was full of pictures, and now it's unfortunately almost completely destroyed because of Harvey and decades of not perhaps storing it as well as maybe we could have. What's left is sometimes photos with no names, sometimes names with no photos, and sometimes nothing at all. Actually, that photo at the bottom, there in the lower right, that's Rabbi Jimmy Kessler's dad. Yeah. But one of the names that just happened to survive intact on this banner is that of somebody named Harold Fink. Harold Fink was all of 22 when he lost his life in France during World War II, and that's why his square on the Beth Yeshurun banner is gold, right, like a gold star, somebody killed in action. Before we found this Beth Yeshurun banner, I'd already done some work with the Fink family, and we have in the Fink family collection Sergeant Fink's Purple Heart. Yeah, it's pretty neat. Okay, back to Beth Yeshurun. I'm not going to go into great detail about the history of Beth Yeshurun, how the merger took place. I did write an article about this for the Herald Voice some months ago, and Lonnie Schooler, who's here tonight, is the real authority on this topic and wrote a wonderful essay in 1991 for the congregation's 100th anniversary that really does a great job of outlining that story. What you see behind me is the fundraising booklet that was printed to build the first Beth Yeshurun. This building was never built because they didn't raise enough money. But that's a story perhaps for a few minutes from now. When exactly merger discussions began between Beth Yeshurun and Bethel is a little dicey. But we have an interesting letter from none other than Joe Weingarten, dated October 18th, 1937, addressed to Ben Streisand. I may be mispronouncing the last name, excuse me. You'll tell me. Who was then the president of Beth Yeshurun. And Joe says, we had a discussion about merging the congregations. I'm real sorry that it didn't work out, but we ought to keep trying because I have a feeling, obviously I'm paraphrasing, I have a feeling that the rank and file members of each congregation wouldn't be so opposed to this. This is 1937. Beth Yeshurun doesn't officially form until 1946. So it's at least 9 years of negotiations to make Beth Yeshurun happen. And the long and short of it is that what seems to have been the sticking point was the use of an organ during services, okay? You'll recall that the Bethel folks broke away in 1924 because they wanted something that felt more modern, more American, and for them, having an organ to listen to while they were praying or listening to a cantor was essential, okay? Beth Yeshurun was an Orthodox congregation. So what are you going to do when in the Orthodox tradition you can't play music on the Sabbath? And here you have a congregation that was formed on the very principle of having music in the sanctuary. So what are you going to do? And they go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and it seems like it all boiled down to the organ. And at one point, Beth Yeshurun came to Bethel and seems to have said, okay, we're going to merge. We're going to build a space in the sanctuary for an organ. We're going to try no organ for a year, and then we're going to have a congregational vote as to whether or not we're going to put in an organ. And Bethel said, no dice. Okay? So how is it that Beth Yeshurun happened? It happened because of the chapel compromise. It happened because of the chapel compromise. Consensus was reached when they decided to create a second service that would remain traditional for those members who wanted it and would not have an organ. And in the main sanctuary, they would have what we would all recognize as conservative services. But still, the Bethel membership and the Beth Yeshurun membership had to vote. We have recovered the ballots that Beth Yeshurun members voted on to create Beth Yeshurun. This is one of those ballots. It's very interesting. The directions are Number 1, I am in favor of amalgamation with Congregation Bethel in accordance with the proposals submitted. Number 2, I am not in favor. Scratch out the one you do not approve. Okay. Most of the ballots are anonymous. They're all numbered. But sometimes people decided, I want my vote to be recorded. And Alvin Collector at 2413 Truxillo wrote his name on the ballot. I'm forgetting, Lonnie may remember, I'm forgetting what the final tally was. Yeah. 220, about 65. Yeah, that sounds about right. There's one ballot that we have in the collection. I didn't put it on the screen. Somebody voted no and said, I do not approve of conservative Judaism, and wrote it on the ballot. It's pretty cool. Again, this stuff survived. It's just amazing. Just amazing that this stuff is here. This is a copy of the Certificate of Resolution that creates the merger and describes the terms whereby Beth Yeshurun will exist according to the following manner of worship. A, that men and women be seated together in the synagogue. B, that a choir may consist of male and female voices, the members of which shall be of the Jewish faith. There's two interesting parts to that one. That the cantor face towards the worshipers when chanting the services. Men will be required to wear hats or skull caps. An organ will be used in conducting the services. There's a note about prayer books, which is kind of boring. And then number 3, in the erection of the new buildings, an additional auditorium will be included in the plans, and the members of the amalgamated congregation who prefer a more traditional Orthodox service will be privileged to maintain services in such auditorium. There you have it. Okay. Between the merger, there's a few years of worshiping in temporary spaces, multiple temporary spaces at once, one of which was the Brith Abraham Hall, which is at Chartres and Clay. Every time I'm driving down Chartres to go to an Astros game, I kind of look for it. It's not there anymore as it was. But this building, what became known as the Southmore Building, debuted in 1950. They didn't raise enough money to build a sanctuary, so they built an educational building, and services were held for a while in the auditorium. There are people in this room who know this much better than me. I don't know why I didn't decide to study like ancient Judaism. Nobody can buzz you if you get ancient Judaism wrong. I made a huge, huge career mistake. Beth Yeshurun was housed at Southmore for 12 years, from 1950 to 1962. And we have some from the Beth Yeshurun archives and some from private archives, a wonderful array of photographs and memorabilia, such as this Sunday school picture you see here. Here is an early confirmation photograph. This is 1948, I want to say, although it could be 1947. I know that Jules Borger, I believe, is in this picture, and you can see Rabbi Malev there. There you go. So that's always fun. This is what the interior of that building looked like when it was set up for services. This came from Martin Nathan's Bar Mitzvah album, which was donated to us. This is Saul Schwartz's Bar Mitzvah cake. Yeah, this is great. Love the cake. Love the cake. That's awesome. This is the last confirmation group to be confirmed at the Southmore Building. This is 1962. Lonnie, is that your year? Okay. Neat. Well, run up and point to yourself. You don't have to run up. It's okay. Yes, it is. June 8th, 1962. And then this, of course, is the rear of the building. Now, if you wanted to visit this building today, if you went to 3501 Southmore, what would you see? You'd see Energy High School, right? Yeah, Energy High School. Go to Southmore and Tierwester. What's that? Yeah, so this building is no longer. Yeah, it's been torn down and replaced by a brand new HISD school, which is in its own right is beautiful, but we've lost another Houston Jewish history landmark. We have, as part of the collection, a full run of the message. So your bar mitzvah and bat mitzvah announcements, your birth announcements are there. We are working on getting funding to digitize the entire run of the Beth Yeshurun message and put it online so that anybody with a computer or a phone can keyword search and find themselves. That would be really cool if we could do that. This is Volume 1, Number 1, November 29th, 1946. This is the copy of the message from Rabbi William Malev's installation, January 18th, 1948, with special guest Dr. Louis Finkelstein. That's pretty cool. I didn't put them in the slideshow, but we have photos from that dinner in the collection. Yes, he was the chancellor of the Jewish Theological Seminary for many, many years. A really influential figure in mid-20th century American Judaism. They dealt with it. That's a great question. Yeah, I think there were a lot of functions at the Rice Hotel. Yeah, that's how they would have done it. That's interesting. Bear with me a second. Okay.
A distinguished colleague of mine in a Midwestern city wrote an article for one of the current Jewish magazines, and he called it a love letter to my congregation. Love letters are usually written before people get married or soon after. When, after 27 years in a rabbinate, a rabbi still feels like writing a letter of love to his congregation, then it must be a lifelong romance. That's the way I feel about Beth Yeshurun. Indeed.
So that is a snippet of a extremely rare recording that we have of Rabbi Malev, and it's almost the last sermon he ever gave. He announced his retirement in June of 1973 and his intention to become Rabbi Emeritus, and then he actually died a month later, a month after he gave that speech you just heard. So we're very blessed to have recovered that. And Rabbi Malev, of course, serves for many years alongside Cantor Wagner. I heard a clap. That's nice. Let's see if this works. We'll listen to a little bit of Cantor Wagner.
ist mein Leben, die will ich streben und schiel. Bestime mucho, du bist mir teuer verläufen, teuer dir. Bessi mein Freund, die verlost mir, während die Tage bei mir wären finster in schwarz. Bessi mein Freund, die vergesst mir, wirst die mitnehmen mit sich mein zerbrochen Haar.
And it goes on, but you get the idea. I actually bought that on eBay. Yeah, just incredible. Okay, let's see. Bear with me, folks. So, long story short, there is a debate within the Beth Yeshurun membership in the 1950s as to what to do. Remember, they don't have a synagogue. They have an educational building with an auditorium. And the intention originally was to build a magnificent synagogue at 3501 Southmore. But beginning in the early 1950s and accelerating thereafter, more and more members of the Houston Jewish community, especially younger families, are leaving that part of the city, Riverside Terrace, Washington Terrace, for the southwest part of the city. And there is a growing, I think, concern that the community not invest in a neighborhood that seems to be losing more and more Jewish families with each passing year. So by the end of the decade, there's an agreement that the future of Houston's Jewish community is in the southwest, and a plot of land is purchased where we're sitting, at what would be Beechnut, and construction begins. And we have a pretty cool collection of photographs of the construction of this building. This are some photos from the groundbreaking ceremony to build this building from May 1961. You can see then President Saul Wiener at the podium. There you can see Joe Weingarten down there at the bottom holding a shovel. I put these pictures on Facebook and somebody said, "Oh my God, that's my uncle. Oh my God, that's my mom," which is so fun for me. It's so gratifying. Not included in this slideshow, but there's actually a copy of this photo in Rabbi Strauss's office. So make up some excuse to go see Rabbi Strauss. We have a picture in the collection. It's a wide shot of this groundbreaking ceremony. So Beth Yeshurun Beechnut is just dirt, okay? But across the bayou in the far right corner of the picture, you can see United Orthodox. Because there was nothing else. I mean, there was nothing else literally built. You could see clear across the bayou. It's amazing. Rabbi Strauss, I need to see you about something. I just want to look at the picture. It's pretty cool. Here are some more pictures of Beechnut being built. This is the dedication book when this building debuted in September 1962. We'll probably digitize that and make it available soon, I would hope. Some pictures of the building when it first opened. Here, of course, is the Greenfield Chapel, right, donated by Mr. J.B. Greenfield. Right, the original sanctuary. Fun to see how it's changed over the years, right? The artwork. This is great. Here's another copy of the message. A dear friend of mine, Mr. Irving Posmentier, the late Harold Turboff. And then fast forwarding into the future a little bit, right? All those confirmation and graduation pictures. We've digitized them. Here's 1983. you might find yourself. Hey, who knows? And I leave you tonight with a few words from Beth Yeshurun's Rabbi Emeritus, Rabbi Jack Siegel.
Happy New Year to one and to all. In a moment, we're going to be beginning the Kol Nidre service on page 207. Kol Nidre says, all promises that I made during this past year and I could not fulfill, oh God, I ask you for forgiveness. Please forgive me. However, there are three different types of promises that the rabbi spoke of. Number one is I make a promise to a fellow human being. I say, lend me $200 and I'll pay you back next week, and I do not pay back the money. That is a promise that is not fulfilled. Kol Nidre has absolutely nothing to do with that type of promise. The rabbi said you've got to go to your fellow human being and settle the matter with him. I remember when I was a youngster, my grandfather, just before Kol Nidre, on the afternoon before Kol Nidre, would take me along with him, and he would knock on the doors of all his friends. And he would say to them two things. If I did something against you during this past year, I ask you for forgiveness. And if I borrowed any money from you, and I did not pay you back, or I caused you some loss, here is a nickel, and I hope that this will settle the problem, the financial problem that we have. Why was it a nickel? It was during the days of the Depression. A nickel was a lot of money during those days. But he realized that he could not go to the synagogue that evening and say the Kol Nidre and listen to the cantor intone the Kol Nidre and say, all the promises that I made to you, they are null and void. On the contrary, if you have something between yourself and a fellow human being that is not satisfactory before Yom Kippur, you must knock on his door, you must speak to him personally and settle that matter. Kol Nidre that we have this evening is if I made a promise to God and I could not fulfill it. I said, God, every Shabbat I'm going to go to the synagogue and I do not. Oh God, I'm going to keep kashrut and I do not fulfill that. God, every morning I'm going to put on my tefillin and I do not fulfill that. Kol Nidre says, God, I made some promises to you during this past year and I did not fulfill them. I ask you, please forgive me.
Okay. And I could go on, and there's more work to do. This work will never be finished. But it's an incredible privilege and joy to be able to do it. And I want to thank, in particular, the members of this congregation for believing in me and believing in this project and allowing us to do this work together. Thank you very much.